All right, everyone, welcome back to the Be Fit podcast. I'm your host, as always, Connor Murphy, here joined with Dr. Sean Rockett. Sean, welcome.
My pleasure. Happy to be here in the garden.
Should I call, is it weird when people call you doctor? Are you okay being called Sean?
Yeah, Sean's great. Rocket Man, whatever.
Rocket Man is fantastic.
Man, whatever you like.
So Dr. Rockett is, a friend of mine, and we became friends through his role at Orthopedics New England as the president of Orthopedics New England, who do surgeries for all different kinds of people, and then more specifically, as of the last decade, getting into CrossFit, and he is actually the head doctor of the CrossFit Games this year as well.
Yeah,
right?
Since 2011.
Since 2011. So yeah, now running on 13. This will be the 13th year there.
If you do the math right. Yeah.
Well, I'm not great at math. You're the one who went to school. Which, by the way, I was talking with Bubba Hagood on Friday. We went out and had some food. Who I want to have on here too because he's just
great. Oh my He's so speaking of rocket scientist, he is a rocket scientist.
You're the rocket man, but he's the rocket scientist.
He's the rocket scientist.
But I want to kind of pick things up. I want to give people a little bit of background because there's something that I didn't know about your stint at Harvard. Is that you played football?
I did.
What was your role there on the Harvard football team?
What was your role? Water bottle? No. So I played freshman football, had a great year, and then came in sophomore and on the varsity, and then subluxed my shoulder. And so every time I went to block somebody, my shoulder would pop out. And so that wasn't very fun anymore. And so I decided, and so I had surgery, but back then I had a labral tear, and back then it was the posterior labrum. They just took it out because it was clicking. So the surgery wasn't invented yet, which I needed. And so right now it only bothers me on my backswing in golf. But, if I played football again, that the shoulder was painful. It wasn't enjoyable. And I just made the call to stop.
What position did you play?
Came in at quarterback. They brought in 10 quarterbacks. And the guy that was ahead, definitely ahead of me, broke all the records for Harvard. He was great. And I realized he was great, and I switched to wide receiver. So did that. I also played baseball, and I kept playing baseball after that. So.
Oh, fantastic. What position did you play in baseball?
I was a speedy center fielder.
Center field. The king of the outfield.
King.
Sometimes people say center fielders are the most athletic or fittest person on a baseball team.
Which isn't saying much, but to be the fittest on a baseball team.
Well, I mean, it's the outfielders. I mean, being the fittest designated hitter is different than being the fittest outfielder out there.
No, I was a Steeler, base Steeler, and traveled the outfield. Took care of the outfield.
I'd imagine if you were a receiver, you had some speed in there, so base Steeler makes sense.
I did.
So then when you started going to Harvard, did you know, hey, I want to be an orthopedic surgeon? Or did you say, hey, these guys fucked up my shoulder surgery so bad, I got to figure out a way to make sure that other athletes don't experience this?
No, it was... so my dad was the team physician. He was a neurosurgeon, my dad was. So he was team physician for BC and Harvard. And so I grew up going, literally, since I was 4, going to all the BC and Harvard football games. And I would see my dad on the sidelines and say, oh, that's kind of cool. He gets to be with the athletes and take care of them. And so then I was getting hurt too as we get older. And as a youngster, I was getting hurt. And I went and I saw the orthopedic surgeon. I said, oh, this is kind of a cool job. And that was it. I was thinking about, sports medicine would be great. It'd be fun. But then, I'd say like organic chemistry hit me. And I was like, okay, do I really want to do this? And then do I really want to get into medicine? And do I really want to go to med school? And gradually it just kept saying yes. So early on it was sort of sports medicine-y, kind of I like this idea. But then gradually it just kept getting, more and more tangible and real. I did work in a law office and I didn't enjoy that. And I worked as an accountant's clerk in another setting and realized I needed more than just numbers and spreadsheets.
That's awesome. So it seems as though the apple didn't fall too far from the tree.
Yeah, it was all that. Yeah.
So you're from this area, local to Boston area?
Grew up in Brookline. Yeah.
Okay.
Three brothers and a little sister. Yeah.
Fantastic. Where do you live now?
Out in Wellesley.
What's your home address and social security number?
Wait a minute. I think I've heard I don't want to do that.
I don't know. You said you're getting older, so maybe I could trick you into that. I don't know. Well, part of I think what's unique between you and I is when I first got up to the Boston area in 2013. I had issues in my elbows from the stuff that happened in the Navy. You know all of this, obviously, but immediately when it wasn't even in like the Natick area. It was even through Reebok. The people at Reebok that had known of you, that had gotten work done by you, they were like, "You've got to go see Dr. Rockett." And at the time, it was a point where I was like, "Hey, like this insurance and all of that stuff," and you were like, "Hey, we can make sure that this person is taken care of," and kind of like push through all the necessary things in order to get me taken care of. Do you think you have a soft spot for athletes because of your athletic background?
Oh yeah, no, I enjoy it. Anytime anybody's motivated to get back to sports, and I can help them and make a difference, take care of their pain, and get them back healthy. And they're very appreciative. All these CrossFit Games athletes are very, very appreciative, and they anytime you give them care, it's a good feeling both ways. They appreciate it. And that's why I go out there to volunteer, because it's a good feeling.
Now, regarding CrossFit athletes, it's always been known from not necessarily from an orthopedic surgery side for me, but just from a side of dealing with people, they tend to be relatively humble athletes. Some of them divas, but how would you rank a CrossFit athlete relative to some of the other athletes from different sports that you work with?
Absolutely humble and appreciative, which sometimes you don't get when you deal with professional athletes all the time.
Why do you think that is from a CrossFit level?
I think it's the culture that, you can't walk into a CrossFit gym and be cocky. Like you'll get your ass handed to you. And I think it's just built in that's the way it is. Like and that's why I love to hire CrossFitters. I love to, everything in the world. I'd like to have, business directories with all CrossFitters. Like it's just, they get it. They're nice. It's just, anytime you can take humility and put it into the equation versus arrogance, it seems like a win.
I can't remember who said this. This isn't my own thought process. Nothing I really say is. It's just stolen from other people. I usually give credit once or twice.
As long as you credit it.
I give it credit once or twice, and then I just sometimes take it as my own.
Nowadays, if you don't.
But someone was relating why CrossFit athletes are humble. And it kind of hit home with me when they were talking about track athletes. And they're like, go to a track and field meet and just watch and just look at who you would think is the most arrogant or cocky person on there. Yeah. And they related, hey, the person who runs the 100-meter. Why? Because it's the shortest sprint. And if you're the best in the world at that, you're the fastest person alive. Uh-huh. And it's like, that's a pretty cool title, being the fastest person alive. And how they related it to what would make them more humble is what you would have to do if you were a CrossFit athlete or you did CrossFit is, all right, the cockiest people alive, they're walking down, not alive, but in the track field, they're walking down to run their race, and they're like, oh, actually, you guys are going to run the 5K against the 5K guys today. And they'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm not so cocky anymore.
Right.
And because they have to be, it's the versatility of it. It's that no matter how good you are at CrossFit, there's someone who is better than you at that specific movement, at that specific exercise.
Interesting, yeah. So there's always somebody better.
Right.
But not overall better. Well,
yeah.
If you're the fittest. Yeah.
And usually significantly. It's like what did Sam, you were at the CrossFit Games when they went back to the ranch and did the deadlift ladder, right?
Yep.
Do you remember what the heaviest deadlift was?
I want to say 600 something.
I think Sam Dancer.
Sam Dancer, I think it was 610 maybe, or 600. And Brooke Wells wasn't that far off. I think she was 450 or something like that.
Yeah, so let's talk about Brooke, because we kind of like segue into that. Brooke's a great friend of mine. I've mentioned her on here many times before. Mm-hmm. But Brooke deadlifted 450 pounds. For any average person, that's insanity. You're like, it just doesn't make sense. However, when we talk about specialization, she's about 400 pounds away from like being the best deadlifter.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not even that you can be really good at something, but to be at the very best level, it's just the gap between that. Now, however, that
can the best deadlifter do the handstand pirouettes?
Can the best deadlifter run 400 meters around a track without having to be timed with a sundial? Right? And again, that's not a knock against the world's best deadlifter. That's what they want to do, but it's more so honing in like the humility that you have to have in that, because you're just really not the best at the certain things that you're doing.
Right. That's a good point.
So speaking of Brooke, she just came out with her book.
Yeah, it's coming out.
Or it's coming out.
It's pre-released and going to be released within a week or two, I think.
I was hoping Christina was going to get me a copy before it came out, but
I can help you with that.
Thanks. Yeah, Christina, I think, asked for my address like a year ago.
And your social security number?
Yeah, I gave it to her. My credit is terrible, but I still don't have that book.
My identity is stolen.
So what was your role in that? Because you were on the floor when she dislocated her elbow, right?
Yeah, I was hanging next to Dave Castro, and we were talking, and he's our relationship has grown throughout the years of just.
And Dave Castro is at the time was the director of the CrossFit Games, and now oversees a lot of different things. He's an OG in CrossFit, has been an original member of the seminar staff, ran the CrossFit Games, essentially started it at his ranch in Aromas, California, and so is pretty much the most sought out person at the CrossFit Games. So when he mentions Dave, that's why it's such a unique thing for that to happen. So
yeah, and our relationship, I came there and he didn't know me from anybody, and we had a few issues, and I would report to him, and he would sort of quiz me, and sort of over the years he's sort of, and I've been right on a lot of things. I've been right, and knock on wood, haven't had anything wrong. But so our relationship I've gained his trust.
Yeah.
And with dealing with the athletes and how I deal with the athletes and deal with injuries, and so we've just grown where we're just hanging out talking during the snatch ladder, and then it happened with Brooke. Brooke dislocated her elbow, and he literally just said, he grabbed and he said, "Get out there!" Like he turned and flipped me over.
You're in, coach.
Yeah,
we need a quarterback.
Get in. And so I tried to get it back in. I could see it was dislocated. Tried to get it back in on the field, on the Coliseum, because sometimes if you get to it quickly, the spasm doesn't set in. So like if you dislocate a body part, muscles will try to, or are contracting. And if they're contracting, they're pulling on the joint and it's not in place. So it can start to be very, very painful, extremely painful. And so if you can get it quickly before the spasm sets in, it's easy. It's a lot easier. And so I was hoping for a drop the mic, pop it in, drop the mic, come back. But it wasn't the case. Part of it was that she is, number one, very muscular, and my hands, trying to get my hands around her arm and get it. So that was part. The other one was she had a brace. She had a thick neoprene sleeve on, and I think that was also preventing us from getting there. But I didn't want to say, okay, let's get your sleeve off here, and so then we brought her from there, and I realized it wasn't going back in. And so then we went back into the back room where we do have an x-ray machine at the Coliseum, and we were able to take an x-ray, make sure nothing was broken, and then we did actually numb her up, and then popped it back in.
And I would imagine when you numb it, it relaxes the muscles to make that job a little easier.
Yeah, so the pain went away. So once her pain goes away, once her muscles aren't fighting, it was easy. Yeah.
And from that, is that a neurological piece that's keeping those?
Can I say that she has already talked about this? So this is not a HIPAA.
We're not violating.
We're not a HIPAA violation. This is not a HIPAA violation.
We talked about this before. We can talk about this.
In case anybody, she's written about it. She's written a book about it, and so yes.
So when you talk about it like flexing, I imagine there's some sort of like, hey, this is what your body's natural reaction. Is there a way, from a standpoint of like would Brooke be capable, or would someone be capable of relaxing the muscles without that type of thing? Or is it just something that's neurologically happening to deal with the pain?
It's there's a reflex. There's a spinal reflex going on where the muscles, you feel pain, goes up here and comes back down, muscles contract. It's not even within control.
Yeah.
There can be, sometimes you can try to calm somebody and get them to relax, but it's tough. It's very tough.
I imagine more tough with the amount of musculature that.
Yep, big and muscular, and just the thing when things are stretched, things are getting stretched, and like a nerves are getting stretched, and it hurts. It really hurts. So.
And I mean, even in the book, the most miraculous thing is that she had surgery. Mm-hmm. Year after surgery, she's back competing at the CrossFit Games. Yeah. Now, I know, I don't want to let's tell Brooke's story or about the book in that, but from a perspective of, I guess it's easier for me to understand. As like a professional athlete, you do whatever you have to. Mm-hmm. But from a health perspective, some people would think that's crazy. Why would you try to do something like that? Yeah. What is your thought process on that?
Like with the Aaron Rodgers Achilles. Any orthopedic surgeon was like, yeah, that's probably too early. And he knew it, and he, was saying, I'm gonna be quicker than anybody else. And, there's a decision to make. Like, do you want to risk re-injury, which high probability if you come back too soon, mm-hmm. high probability, or do you want to just wait till it's solid and wait till it's healed? A professional athlete is gonna push the envelope, and that's what they do. But taking the risk, it's a risk. If you go too early, there's a high risk of re-rupture. And so that's the fine line that sports medicine doctors try to get people to, get back quickly. But we are usually the ones trying to pump the brakes, trying to get them not to go back, like ACL and ACL recovery, ACL surgeries. We're always pump the brakes, get big, get strong, get mobile, wait for this to heal. Don't be the fastest ACL recovery in the world, let it heal. So,
and I guess a couple of things. One, with an ACL, because you hear all the time, you hear people like, I had an LCL, I had an MCL, I had, meniscus tears and that type of stuff. But why is the ACL such a longer recovery process? What does that do for the knee?
So it's the stabilizer for rotation and for twisting, pivoting, not running, but you can run without an ACL, you can bike without an ACL, but it's really the rotational sports. It's such a unique ligament, and the surgery that's involved, a lot of swelling develops. So just like I said, when you have a swelling in a joint there's a spinal reflex where you have swelling, it stretches out your tissue, it goes to your spinal cord, and your spinal cord comes back and shuts down your muscles. Your muscles get atrophied. And that's the fight, that's the battle that you have to fight the atrophy, being safe, but overcoming the natural spinal cord reflex that's occurring. And it's just the amount of atrophy that takes place. It's a huge amount of atrophy. And that's why there's a lot of rehab and PT to fight the muscles. There's some new techniques out there. One that called blood flow restriction. I don't know if you've heard about it. You put tourniquets around legs or arms, and you inflate the tourniquet, and not to the point of losing, flow, but there is some, we don't know all the details about this, but blood flow restriction has been shown to have a quicker muscle recovery than without it.
And that's almost contrary. A lot of people think, hey, we need more blood flow.
Yeah, there's something happening. They think it's related to, that your muscles are seeing more stress, and the more stress they see, they might ramp up the production of their muscular tissue. We don't know all the details right now, but there are definitely studies out there showing that people can gain muscle strength faster than without it.
And have you seen that in patients?
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's very unique, because I think about studies, even from a nutrition standpoint. It's like, hey, this is the best thing for this, or like, hey, this is the best thing for that. And when you have people that have done that do certain things and get certain results from it. You know, it's almost, and obviously we want to know the mechanism. You always want to know, hey, why is this happening? I want to know precisely, because then you can really hone in on it. But I almost think with a lot of athletes, and probably why, and a lot of stuff that you've done to even pave the way for sports medicine and people getting back to recovery, is there's almost this black box theory in that you're like, hey, we don't really know why this is working, but it's fucking working. And so we're going to do it. And we haven't had...
And it's not harmful.
Yeah, we haven't had the regression from this. So here's something that's in it. And I think there's something to say about that too, where I think a lot of doctors will be, and maybe not anymore, but I know, and probably similar to you growing up, the answer to a lot of stuff after surgery was like, hey, let's not move this thing for a while.
Right.
What do you think is, and not necessarily just like a Brooke Wells dislocating her arm or dislocating her elbow, having surgery to repair it, it's dislocated, it's not, or there's surgery needed, there's not surgery needed. What do you think the worst thing to do after suffering an injury, whether you have surgery or don't have surgery? What do you think the worst thing to do is?
The worst thing to do is, you know, I want to say immobilize, you know, so joints should undergo range of motion, even ligaments. And if you have a ligament surgery, there should be range of motion, because, you know, we know from ACLs 20, 30 years ago, people were put in a cast and just locked up, and they became very stiff, and they weren't unstable anymore, but they couldn't bend their knee anymore either. So that's probably one of the worst things you can do, is not fight for range of motion. The other is, you know, just recovery in general. Some people have surgery and they form they get into a castle and they have a moat around their life. They just isolate, you know, so getting out, keeping socialization, you know, getting to your friends, getting to your gym, getting to your work, do that as fast as possible. There's a significant post-surgery depression that can happen, where people just completely, everything shuts down and they just cocoon. And there's studies showing that people that get back out there faster actually do better, because they have the support from people.
That's interesting. So it's not just from like a physical point too,
but definitely mental.
And do you think, and again, we talk about this a lot. I had Chris Irwin on here.
Oh, cool.
We both know well, who has gone through a lot of mental health illness that has caused physical illness. And so it's interesting to hear you say, hey, there's not only is it, you know, the better thing to do for recovery, but and the better thing to do for your mental health and mental well-being, but there's a bridge between those two things where both are going to. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of for a lot of people, CrossFit is, you know, I think why people become obsessed with it is because it is their life. They have that support system.
They can do that, right? Like if you're a runner and you have an Achilles tendonitis, you know, you're not going to be running as much, and you're not going to be in your running partners and buddies. But that's the best part of CrossFit, is that you have a shoulder issue, you can still do legs and scale and modify. You have a knee issue, you can still do upper body and do other stuff. So there's you know, as we say, infinitely scalable stuff. There's all the stuff that you can do, and that's what people want to get to the gym. They want to hang out with their friends. They want to, you know, still see them after the workout, check in with them, and yeah. So that is one benefit of CrossFit.
So you talk about CrossFit a lot, but it sounds even more so from like a sports medicine side of it. It sounds more so from obviously a personal side of it. You, as I know, but maybe listeners don't know, you've done CrossFit for quite some time.
Yeah. Started 2007. Yeah. In
2007. So, you know, math says that's about 17 years if you started the beginning of 2007. But so that's a long time. That's like an OG of CrossFit.
Yeah, it's and then people are like, oh, how did you know, aren't you worried about getting hurt? Like I'm not going to go do something if I think I'm going to hurt myself. As a matter of fact, I tell, you know, some people, like, I stopped playing soccer and basketball because I was more afraid of like people slide tackling me and getting hurt, and I was not in control. Like, I'm not in control when I'm out on the soccer field and someone slide tackles me. Like, and so I literally stopped playing because I was afraid I was going to tear my ACL playing soccer, which we see a lot of in masters athletes. You know,
right.
That's very common. Basketball, very common. ACL tears. So
people who are getting back out there being like, hey, in my prime, I was hitting triple doubles, and then all of a sudden you need triple double knee surgeries.
They watch the movie Air, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. What a great movie.
Did you see that? Oh
yeah,
we just saw it again. It was good. It was good.
It's really, I didn't know what to expect, but it was.
Oh yeah.
It was cool to see.
And that Damon speech, that was just
fires you up,
right?
Speaking of one of the most competitive athletes of all time, and Michael Jordan, but most of these listeners aren't Michael Jordan. If you're listening to this, sorry to generalize, and they're not the Brooke Welleses.
Yeah.
They're people who want to get fitter, and people who want to improve the quality of their life through fitness, or at least they want to improve the quality of their life, but maybe some of them don't know how. Any advice for someone that's listening to this and they're like, and maybe it's not, maybe it's a My Stride class or a Barry's boot camp or something, or maybe it is a CrossFit gym. And there's that misconception where you have to be fit to start or you're going to get hurt. What advice do you have to someone as the president of Orthopedics New England and the head CrossFit doctor of the CrossFit Games? What do you have to someone like that?
I hear that a lot. People are like, oh, I don't want to start exercising till I'm in shape. Like, all right, it just doesn't make sense. You got to start somewhere. Any gym should, any coach in any gym or any studio should welcome you with open arms. If you're nervous, you're worried, anybody should be welcoming anybody into that and allaying their fears. Injury rates, people say, oh, you get hurt. We know CrossFit, just for one, CrossFit is, the injury rate is less than basketball, soccer, football. It's up there with gymnastics and weightlifting. So it's not that, they've looked at injury rates. It's less than running. Injury rates for CrossFit are less than runners. So good coaches, good gyms will scale and start slow. You have to start slow or else we'll have this tendonitis discussion, which is where you...
He wasn't pointing at me when he said that. It was a you general, not you. No. That's me.
Suppose you did too much. What if? No. So starting slow, and any coach should have a ramp up. Should have probably a 6-month process of ramping up your workouts. But yeah, we know the benefits of exercise mentally. Just from endorphin release, from prevention of Alzheimer's potentially, bone structure, cardiovascular. You go from head to toe, cardiovascular, diabetes, everyththing. The weightlifting, fitness has been shown to benefit a lot of things. We have a thing in our gym at CrossFit Launchpad. We put up like different body parts and say like, what are the benefits of exercise and weightlifting for this organ or for this body part? And it's, bone, prevention of osteoporosis, tons of things. Just, that's the number one treatment for osteoporosis is, weight-bearing activity. You don't need a medicine, you don't need drugs. Eat a balanced diet and lift weights.
Big piece of that too is diet, especially when we talk about from the orthopedic side, is like the inflammation side of things. Where we know as inflammation, it causes its effects of that, and then even specifically what we've been preaching for CrossFit is overconsumption of liquid processed and refined carbohydrates, which aids into your inflammation and aids into overproduction of insulin, hyperinsulinemia, and the deadly quartet, and everything that that Dr. Norman Kaplan talked about that in his seminal article in 1989. It's like we've known that stuff, but now you're talking. It's like, hey, you couple this diet, and then we couple this stuff with fitness, and it's almost
unbreakable.
Yeah, it's almost like you do. Unbreakable in the sense of different than what you think of. Like I don't know. I guess to ask you is that you don't just work on athletes, right?
No, yeah. I see joint replacements. I do knee and hip replacements. So I see people from 40 to 90. Yeah. And
this is such a biased question. It's such a layup, but someone who's eating well and exercising, whether at an elite level or just at a level where they're regularly attending a CrossFit gym, have no want or desire to compete. But what does the recovery time look like to someone who is not exercising at all or eating well?
Yeah, no, it's proven that somebody will recover faster. Also, it's proven that if you strengthen your muscles, you can prevent surgeries. You can prevent knee replacement from having arthritis. You can prevent having issues in the long run if you build up your muscles to protect your joints, to support your joints, and move your joints. They don't get stiff. They get actually nourished. The joint, when it moves, the synovial fluid, the lining, gets pushed into your cartilage, and it nourishes the cartilage. So motion and strength is key. As Hippocrates said, exercise and diet is the key. Mm-hmm. And 800 years, no, what is he? I think Hippocrates was, I want to say 300 BC or 200 BC. He was right.
So you're saying we've known that for a while.
A long time.
Yeah. It's just so interesting to me when you still hear that, when it's like, I don't want to get hurt, or I don't want. Yeah. And it's like, I've seen more people roll their ankles walking down the road or going downstairs than I ever have in a CrossFit gym, or ever have in a gym in general.
Oh yeah.
And I imagine you at an upper level of that, you've seen more injuries from. It was like, oh, what were you doing here? And it was like, well, I was putting on a pair of pants, or I was doing X, Y, Z. Like, right. What's something common? What's an injury common to people that are not exercising? Let's say from like an age demographic of like 30s, yeah, and then 40s, and then 50s.
A common injury in someone who's not exercising in different ages. Yeah, I mean, 30-year-olds, you can get into other sports, right? Other sports, tendon tears, quad tears, patella tendon tears. Those are classically in the 40 to 50-year-olds. Rotator cuff tears. If someone lifts up something heavy and it's too heavy, you can rip your tendon. So strength training can prevent that. Like if you know how to lift something up and have good body mechanics and are taught how to move weights and lift weights off the ground, you're not as at risk to rip something. And then you get into older people who have osteoporosis. We talk about weight-bearing activity. People 70, 80 years old who fall and they don't have as much musculature around their body, so if they're losing muscle and they fall and they hit their hip, they break their hip. And some people don't break their hip if they have better bone density. And that's what weight-bearing activity, when you're 40, 50, 60, is going to prevent you from getting a hip fracture when you're 80 or 90. And we see it maybe one a day, a hip fracture a day. That's a lot.
That's an eye-opening number.
Lot.
I couldn't even fathom that.
Yeah. No, there's about one hip fracture a day that comes into our hospital. Yeah.
And is there, I don't want to sound mean, is there a common theme?
It's osteoporosis.
And is there, could you potentially look at an injury and have try not to assume, but have an idea about what that person looks like or what their health state is from fitness?
Yeah, so again, as you get older, your balance can go down, mm-hmm. your cognitive function might go down, your awareness of where your feet are in space and tripping, so you're tripping more easily, and then you combine that with not as much musculature, and then osteoporosis, and then again if you have dementia, you might be getting up in the middle of the night and confused and don't know where you are, and so just hitting the ground just because you don't know exactly what your surroundings are. So there are common themes that we see with these people with hip fractures, but it usually, number one is the bone structure.
Mm-hmm. And we even talk about the muscle surrounding it, but then the bone density as well. Mm-hmm. Something that's affected positively from exercise. It's just great. Like, we even have this conversation. You bring up a statistic like one hip fracture a day. It's like you want to get out there and shake people. It's like, why aren't you working out? Like start.
Yeah, no, and it's tough because they're 80, 90-year-olds, but it starts at some point.
Tell me about CrossFit Launchpad.
Launchpad. That is my wife's gym. She was a family medicine doctor. And
Dr. Rockett.
Dr.
As well.
Rhonda Rockett.
Rhonda Rockett.
Rhonda Rockett.
Rhonda the Rocket. Can you call her that?
Rocket Woman.
Rocket Woman.
And she decided she just was kind of, she would see somebody 15 minutes every 6 months in practice and talk to them about diet, exercise, sleep, stress management, nutrition. And they'd come back 6 months later and she's like, how we doing? And they'd be like, not so much. And then she'd say, okay, see you again in 3 months, and come back in 3 months. And she's like, how are we doing? And they're like, yeah, no, I haven't. I keep drinking Diet Cokes and Gatorades. And so but there was a glimmer of hope, because she would just make one change. And she'd say, okay, let's stop the Diet Coke. I want to see you in 3 months. We're going to draw some blood and see. So she literally was doing not experiments, but taking care of people.
I think clinical trials, I suppose.
Pretty much, yeah, like making one change, where let's eliminate this or decrease or eliminate, and follow it up with blood work. And so she had her blood work and her patient profiles, and the stuff was amazing. Like, she had people with high cholesterol, cutting out the sugar, adding eggs, which was a pariah, adding 6 eggs a day, cutting out sugar, and their cholesterols were going down. And she had multiple patients like this.
With objective data.
With cholesterols, yes.
And but I can go back to studies long time ago, when they were still saying this stuff, that dietary cholesterols have little to no effect on your actual cholesterol. So, why were people still doing that? Why did it take her to have to?
It's sort of what we've been told, that fat, eat fat, you get high cholesterol. That's.
I guess it makes sense from like a toddler perspective of, like, if I eat this fat, it is fat, not understanding digestion or anything like that. So maybe.
So she'd have this, and then she realized, she was just kind of getting frustrated with the same conversation, like, she wasn't having enough of the victories. She was having so many more defeats, and it was just so disheartening. And she's like, if I, spent more time with these people, and I had the opportunity to spend more time with these people, I could change, what they're doing. And then came CrossFit, and then she just kind of was getting burnt out. She got burnt out, and then she's like, I want to do this. I want to start a gym. And started a gym, and now she gets to spend 7 days a week with people, and has had huge success stories. There's some videos out there. Rocket Science is a great video by Michael Dalton, came by and videotaped us. And just great. People off rheumatoid meds, people off blood pressure meds, people off diabetic meds, changing their body types, changing their diet, and just having huge success.
And Launchpad started and is still at your home?
Yeah, in our garage.
Garage gym.
Yep.
Old school style.
Yep.
How many members are there? There's probably some that come and go, but
70.
70 members. You have 70 roommates now. Now that the kids are out of the house, it's like, hey, you know what? We need 70 more of them.
Exactly.
But that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And there are, there's probably what she probably saw from a family doctor practice. She would see 70 different people
2,000 patients to 3,000 patients.
Yeah, I would say 70 in a couple of days.
Yeah.
But to be able to have that effect on people, like, I just don't know of another medical thing where you can have that profound of an effect on people, rather than, just, I guess it's the difference between like a swim coach and a lifeguard. Right?
Yeah. And the medical system, as we know it now, isn't reimbursing for that. They're not paying a doctor to see somebody 7 days a week. Like, you can't get paid to see somebody 7 days a week and check their nutrition, check their, it's just not feasible in the system. So.
Do you think there could be a standard set where doctors could prescribe, if you have enough either evidence or you have enough qualifications. I guess like the qualification stuff is tough too, because I know coaches that have their level 1 but just care about people and stay in their lane of squat, deadlift, press, eat real foods, and are making life-changing things.
Yeah.
Do you think that there could be a time or something when it could be a prescription rather than, hey, you're at a stroke level blood pressure and you're incredibly obese. You are not going to be prescribed Ozempic. You're going to be prescribed 6 months of CrossFit gym. Like, is that a possibility?
Sure.
What has to happen?
It doesn't have to be CrossFit. It doesn't have to be CrossFit.
Right, yeah, right. We're biased from what we know. But yeah, someone from a coach. And I mean, are there nutritionists that can be prescribed? Is there a level of education where you can
you can refer to a nutritionist, sure. And having that combination of having a nutritionist in a gym, that works with people and lifestyle decisions again, it's just it's simple, but it's difficult.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Right? It's not easy, right?
Simple.
It's simple, it's not easy, right? It's just, if you don't buy the stuff, you won't eat it. But the problem is you go out into the real world and everybody looks at you like, oh, why aren't you eating that? Or why aren't you doing that? Like, it's just, there's a lot of external assumptions and external pressures for people who are trying to make good calls and good decisions. And I'm not saying you have to go sugar-free for 5 years. Everybody has sugar. Like, anybody has sugar. And there's fruits and vegetable sugar, but then, yes, people splurge. But there's a difference between splurging and going out and doing something fun and doing something nice versus, every day you have a pint of ice cream or you have a quart of ice cream. There's a difference with your body if you do it once a month or 2 months versus, every day.
I also think from just a trainer perspective is that there's a sliding scale that people want to refuse to acknowledge to save people from hurting their feelings. And when someone may see Rich Froning eating McDonald's or drinking a soda, I don't even know if he drinks soda. I mean, this is back before he started having more joint pain. And he was like, maybe I need to clean this up too. But someone sees someone at this state of super health, and they're like, yeah, I had a few donuts, and they think, hey, I had a good week. I did 3 days eating well. I'm going to have donuts now. And in my perspective, I'm like, that's bullshit. Like, you haven't earned that. That's not a win for you. You're still, you are still at 35% body fat. Like, you don't get, like, you can enjoy life, but you've got to get yourself to an area where that's not going to be a potential, death sentence for yourself.
Yeah.
And, it's funny you say, we don't expect everyone to go like 5 years without sugar, but I don't know a single human that wouldn't benefit from that. I mean, maybe we're talking about some like ultra marathon runners or something in that sense, but someone who is chronically ill. Yeah. Have you read the book Sugar Blues?
I haven't read that one, no.
It's an older one. It's the classic like Glassman. I had you read it, and you're like, wow, like there's a lot of things about like kids growing up and being addicted to sugar. And I'm like, well, why couldn't I focus in school? And it was like, I only had 3 bowls of Lucky Charms every morning before school, and then I was so exhausted. Like an hour and a half in, I had my head in my arms. I couldn't pay attention. They were like
mandarin oranges and a little spaghetti and tomato sauce.
Oh gosh, yeah. School lunches, just pizza. It's like pizza day. You're like,
juice,
there's
orange juice, spaghetti with tomato sauce, and mandarin oranges for dessert. Like,
it's healthy. But I think there's like a scale where it's like sometimes people need to be a little bit harder on those people in like a tough love sense. It's not like, hey, you're fat, you can't eat this. It's more of like, hey, like, what do you want to eat this more than you'd like to have this quality of life?
That's like the tipping point. Like, at what point are you going to say, okay, I'm going to take charge of this? Like, when you're sick of hearing other people or yourself, or like, what is that tipping point? And that's what it comes to.
It seems like Rhonda was able to be closer to that point, because I think a lot of people's tipping points are when they go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, if you don't change something, you're going to die, or you're going to have a very miserable life, or we're going to have to cut your foot off.
Yeah.
And then people are like, look, you kind of get that grotesque, like, well, not having a foot would be, maybe I don't want this donut as much as I want to have a foot.
Right.
So being at that level, I think, is so unique that she decided to change just to make a bigger difference. And that I want to link like some of the stuff that she's done and highlight in like the YouTube video for this,
Yeah, sure.
like some of those things, because it's just so cool. And I think that people will see it and be like, oh, I can do this too.
Yeah, no, definitely. Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it.
People just see this stud of a Harvard quarterback and just stud athlete, and they're like, well, I couldn't do that. And it's like, you too. Yeah. You too can be a quarterback and center fielder for Harvard University.
What's he doing?
It could be. So you've now been, how long have you been operating as an orthopedic surgeon?
Medical school, residency ended in 99. So since 1999, I've been able to be an attending. Attending is, when you can do stuff on your own.
Yeah.
You don't need supervision.
Do you have are there any stories that, and it doesn't have to be like names or any, I mean, your realm more than I do. But there ever been a story where you're like, maybe this isn't for me? Has there ever been something like so out of the ordinary where you're like, okay, this is not what I signed up for?
Well, there is a story of in medical school.
Okay.
So I'm moving along, chugging along, and just med school, just the amount of knowledge and books and tests and studies and memorization and new terminology, and just, like, there was a point where it was like summer of second year. So second year, 2 years of medical school are all tests and books. The second 2 years are you go to the hospital, you get to go to, take care of patients, you get to go to clinics. So that's third and fourth year of medical school. First 2 years, grind, just every day, memorization. But, you still have fun. But so then second year medical school, I was at a point where I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I am sick of this. I can't handle this anymore. I was at the tipping point, and I was ready to just say, done. And so my mom is a general surgeon. It's
a family of learning doctors here.
So she goes, well, Sean, what's going on? Why are you upset? And she goes, I'm getting kind of sick of this. I don't know if this is the right field. I don't know if this is the right thing for me. And and that's the other part too. As you are going through medical school, you're still, like this. Your friends are starting to do this. Your friends are starting to have a job, be successful, get a car, make money, get married, and you're like, and so it's a grind, like anything. But I just said, I'm just getting kind of sick of this. And she goes, well, what are you studying? And I go, well, I'm doing viruses and molecular biology and microbiology and bacteria, and I'm doing genes and chromosomes. And she's like, well, of course, you're sick of this. She goes, that's not your strength. Like, your strength is people and like meeting patients and taking care of people and talking to humans. She goes, of course, viruses, and of course you're going to be upset and bummed out. She goes, wait a few more months and get to third year. She goes, if you get to third year and you tell me you're sick of it, then I would let you, I would support you, but I don't think you should quit right now. And she was right.
Sometimes the prerequisites are.
Yeah. So, but other stuff, just the hours, the hours of residency were tough. Just sometimes you get called a couple times to the emergency room in the middle of the night. And so sleep deprivation is a significant, issue. You're tired, fatigued, not a lot of sleep sometimes. And just being able to deal with that sometimes can get tough. But the residency itself was just long hours. You come into the hospital around 4:30 or 5 a.m. You round on the patients. You see the patients. Then you go to the OR, and you're in the OR all day, and sometimes till the next day, until you leave the next afternoon. And so it added up. Yeah.
How many surgeries do you think you've done?
Oh boy.
In the last 25 years? I was doing the math, by the way. I think the 25 from 99 to 2024.
He's getting good.
He's getting good.
And he's not using his fingers. I've been watching him. He's not using his fingers.
I was using my toes.
Hey Siri. So as you know, when you start, no one knows who you are, and then just word of mouth grows, and so your reputation starts to increase. So early on, you're not operating as much, but nowadays it's probably 400 to 500 cases a year. So whatever that is.
Come on, don't put that math on me.
So say 400 for say 20 years. There you go. Times 4.
So it's 80,000 surgeries.
No.
800,000.
8,000. 400 times.
I said 80.
400 times 20. Yeah. 8,000.
80.
8,000.
8?
8,000? 400 times 20? 2,000 times 4. Yeah.
Carry the zero minus. Yeah, 80. Yeah. 80,000.
8,000.
8 million surgeries.
Get out of here.
Rockett
A Googleplex. Googleplex. We can edit this afterwards, right?
No. We keep it in there. They're like, we get it. I got my high school diploma, okay? Now, something that I admire about you on top of all of this other stuff is we've talked about this and almost talked about it on the contrary of lifestyle and of, you don't have to go 5 years sugar-free, but I've always admired you in the way of your work, but also in the time that you've spent with your family, the vacations, the time off, your ability to just kind of, I don't know if like turn off is the right word, and it may not be as true as it seems to me as it is with you, but to go out and go to dinner and have a drink and do that type of stuff. It's like you've done that really, really well. And as someone who's seen that at the health benefits, what can you recommend to people to understand like a balance of life? Like, hey, you can have all of these incredible things that fitness can bring and nutrition can bring, but you don't have to give up some of the other fun stuff.
Yeah, I think it's, when I was little, I used to like reading about the Greeks and the Romans and the mythology, and I've always, my motto has been sound mind and a sound body. Like, don't favor one over the other. Like, you got to keep both. And so sound body is pretty simple. Staying fit, staying healthy. But sound mind, learning, always being curious, getting out there, and relaxation is too. I think my parents, they sometimes felt guilty that they were away a lot. They were in the operating room a lot, and so whenever they had free time, we were going on a day trip to Maine, or we'd go to Rhode Island, Rocky Point, or we'd go down the Cape. We used to love to go for lobsters up in Maine. So they, like every weekend, we literally would do day trips almost every weekend. And then vacations, they would, take us on vacations. Summer would have like a 2-week vacation. So, so I think having 5 siblings, or 5 in our family, growing up with 5 siblings, tight-knit family. Mom and Dad were very big at, family, keeping family together. We're a unit. We, just, almost make decisions for each other and what's good for the family, and then they were also good at letting us branch out and do our own thing, and with my kids, I think I like to, same thing. I like to keep them together, keep them on vacations and sports. Sports was our simple way of we'd all go to sports games. We'll all go to each other's sports games, and so and also too, I would feel guilty about missing things sometimes if I was on call or had to go do a hip fracture on somebody. And Rhonda has a funny line one time where it was like 6 o'clock at night, and I call up and I say, hey, I'm not going to be home tonight. And she goes, what's her name? And I go, she's Ethel, and she's 89. And it was a hip fracture. I had to go do a hip fracture. And that wasn't a HIPAA violation. I made up that name. But yeah, no, so, just being able to relax is important, and not being stressed. And I've started, working on a lot of things like sleep management and making sure I'm not staying up too late and getting to bed earlier and working on that. I used to probably stay up too late and wake up too early, and so I'm really focused now on being sure, shutting off the lights, the phone, just disconnecting. Yeah.
It's funny that you say that about Rhonda in that story, because that's another thing that I've noticed over the years too, is that I feel like your communication is really good, and maybe it's a little bit easier because you've both come from a profession of being doctors.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think, in any relationship, in my work relationship with my business partners, and with my girlfriend, and with my daughter, and with my daughter's mom, and all this different stuff, it's like everything seems to be significantly better with communication.
Oh, yeah.
Has there been things that you've worked on, or is there advice that you can give to someone who is either going to med school, either working 4 jobs, they're not doctors, or anything like that, in order to have communication like you seemingly have with your family, with your wife, with your kids?
Yeah, never go to bed angry. Never go to bed angry. That's important, and just dealing with it. Don't like we joke about not internalizing and keeping it, so that if she says something like, "Oh, would you shut the dishwasher, please?" and what the like it's not the shut the dishwasher. It's the fact that I've kept 3 different issues internalized, and so getting it out there, talking about it, because it's either way. It's either going to blow up later, or you gotta just deal with it at the moment. And so keeping something smoldering is sort of tough. Yeah,
I can imagine.
That would be my recommendation: is get it out there, talk about it.
And you referenced the dishwasher and like that thing.
Shutting the dishwasher.
Well, as maybe it's easier for you not to sweat the small stuff because there's so many bigger picture things that are going on. But what do you have for people that are sweating that, or that either like in a relationship or in school or in things that's like just the littlest things are setting them off? I mean, what is?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess your mom gave great advice about like, hey, like give it another year to where you can focus on what you want to do and grind through the stuff that you were probably relatively irritable during that year and that season. But
that's the other tough too. Like, what if she didn't, push me? Like, you got knowing when to push somebody, and with my kids too. It's like they come to me with a thing, and I could either be like, oh, come on, suck it up, let's go, put on your, let's go.
Yeah.
And so the question is, like, at what point do you give them a little extra push to help them and to guide them, and maybe give them a little inertia, get off the inertia couch, versus listening to them and understanding and saying stop or don't do it if it doesn't make you happy. That's I still have trouble with it. I still don't know how much to let them do whatever the hell they want, or give them a little, you can do this, or keep going, or it's like anything in life.
I guess if there was an objective answer to how little or how much, life would be a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
But through your trials and tribulations through that, are there any like signs that you have? Are there any things that you're like, hey, here's something where I need to push, or here's something where I don't? And obviously you're not going to bat 1,000 at that, but is there any guiding tenets for that?
No, I don't think there is. That's the tough part. I think it's pluses and minuses. Like, you see the results of your push, and then they come back and they say, hey, I'm glad you gave me a little push on that, like, because now I really enjoy it. Or I think it's just trial and error. It's life is there's a long time of decisions every day. There's a decision to be made, and you just sort of have a feel for when you can push hard, and again, a parent, there's different philosophies. Like, and have you ever heard of it? One is an engineer parent versus a shepherd. Like, an engineer is going to create everything and show them what to do and how to do it, whereas a shepherd is like, you're just going to walk with them and guide them and maybe have them go right versus left, as opposed to, So I heard that one probably a little too late. When I was back into my engineer philosophy, you can do this and do that. So
yeah, so you can teach someone the exact spin you need to put on a bowling ball, or you can throw the bumpers up on the gutter and be like, hey, let's figure it out with a couple different tosses.
Yeah.
And if I relate that back to what you were saying too about what Rhonda was doing as, hey, I want you to do this. We're just going to make this small change and then we're going to see if there's any objective data from that. I think maybe something I struggle with that I'm getting from what you're saying is there's times when I'm like, this is the time that I need to push someone, or this is the time that I need to guide them on their own.
Yeah.
And then 6 months down the road, it's kind of being able to go back to that and having the courage to say, was that the right call, to then make the changes in the future, as opposed to saying, hey, this is what I do at this time, I'm going to push and do this. Right. Whereas if you push someone and it went too far, it's like, do you have that self-awareness to come back and be like, hey, maybe that wasn't right. Maybe the next chance.
Or they don't come back.
Yeah.
Like what's the tipping point? If they say, oh, this guy's been yelling at me for 3 months, I'm not enjoying it. Like, right?
Yeah.
When is it? When do you push somebody hard enough?
It's very insightful.
Yeah.
It's I know obviously you're more than just an orthopedic surgeon, but as a father of kids from what I see that are incredible. And
Thanks.
I think more than that, what's impressive to me is I think anyone can have kids that end up being incredible, but I think I'd rather see, and what I want is to continue to have a fantastic relationship with my kids and to have them want to come to me for advice more important than, hey, this is, another child is going to be a doctor, or another child is going to be a musician, or another child is going to be this. If someone's like, hey, I really, I'm currently working at this job and I really enjoy it and I'm happy, and you have those conversations, it's like, that's kind of more success as a parent than being like, hey, well, my son's a billionaire, he doesn't speak to me anymore, but
right.
yeah, he can thank me for that. It's like, shit.
We always joke about the Cats in the Cradle song. You know that song? Cat Stevens, about a father who's very busy, and the kid comes up and he's like, "Hey, Dad, when are we going out, Dad?" I forget the lyrics, but basically it's the kid, asking for attention and asking to play with the kid, and the father's like, "I'm busy, maybe later, son, maybe later, son." And then the son grows up, and the father's looking to spend time, and the son becomes the father, saying, the father's like, "Hey, do you want to get together?" And he goes, maybe later, Dad. So it's so the kids. So it's like sometimes like I'll say like, "Oh, I got to go do something, or I'm going to miss that," and they'll sing the Cats in the Cradle song.
So they hold you accountable.
Yeah. They'll, and I'm like, "Cats in the Cradle, Silver Spoon, Little Boy Blue, Man on the Moon. When you coming home, Dad? I don't know when. We'll get together."
Yeah.
That was it. So yes, they give us a little knife.
Yeah, just to give it back, right?
Yeah.
After all those years.
Exactly.
Touching on, and I think we've actually gone over our hour, which is, absolutely fine. I just always want to make sure that I'm, cognizant of your time and people who want to listen.
Yeah, sure.
But before we go on to kind of how someone can find you from a doctor perspective and all of that stuff, is there anything? Granted, we have my daughter on here. We can't even call it the Be Fit podcast anymore because people are like, yeah, we don't care about that. I have like 2 separate sections now. They're like, I just want to hear Ty talk. But from like a fitness podcast, like I always try to give tangible things for someone with each person that's coming in to be like, hey, here's something you can do tomorrow or today or tonight to start to improve the quality of their life through fitness, whether it be through a diet, nutrition, or through an orthopedic health thing. What's one thing that someone listening to this can start tomorrow?
I love Tabata.
Tabata, what he's talking about is a time-bound kind of workout scheme where you work for 20 seconds and rest for 20 seconds, or rest for 10 seconds, or work for 40 seconds and 20. But let's just say for
20-10.
Ease of conversation,
4 minutes.
4 minutes. So it's 8 rounds of 20 seconds of work and 10 seconds of rest. So you love Tabata. So what does someone do there?
Why do I love Tabata? Because I have people come in with knee arthritis, and I'll say, what are you doing for exercise? They're like, I can't exercise. I can't exercise. I'm like, oh my God. I go, do you have dumbbells or a gallon of water or 2 jugs of milk or anything? Take them and do 20 seconds overhead press and do it, Tabata, 4 minutes. And I go, and they're like, oh, but how does that get you cardiovascularly? And I'm like, don't worry.
Do it.
You'll see it. You'll see. And and people will come back, they're like, oh my God. And I was like, 4 minutes. Like they go, because it hurts when I walk on the treadmill for 50 minutes. I'm like, yeah, because you're walking on the treadmill on a bad knee for 50 minutes and you're just pounding it. And so that's my glimmer of fitness for somebody who has an ailment. Say you have an upper shoulder issue, and you could do a Tabata air squat or any kind of squat for 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. If you have a knee arthritis, you could do a dumbbell press, seated dumbbell press for 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. And
if you have a couch at home, you can sit down on your couch and stand up for 20 seconds and rest for 10.
You could do that.
Which is harder than you think it is.
Right.
That's awesome. I love that.
That's my little thing.
Microphone drop there. So if someone wants to, let's say if someone wants to get a hold of you from Orthopedics New England, how would someone reach out if they're having hey, maybe it's time for me to get this looked at. Maybe it's time for me to have surgery. I've been putting off surgery. How would someone get a hold of you that way?
Sure. So orthopedicsnewengland.com or orthopedicsne.com is our site, our main site, our website, and you can go there. There are phone numbers to call. There's a box that you click on to request a visit, request an appointment. From a social media point of view, I have a blog called 321gomd.com. I got a new YouTube channel.
You do?
I do. So I had knee surgery myself. I was like, I'm sitting around like, well, I got to do something. And so I created a YouTube channel so I can give people videos on their recovery, like what the recovery and rehab is like for a rotator cuff repair, for a knee replacement. I'm getting some analytics going. It's going.
I love that. I forgot you told me about that when we were at breakfast the other day. That's awesome.
Yeah. I am writing an ebook. So the ebook, we're soon to be named, but the ebook is, how everybody maybe you don't know, but like if you're looking up, if you had a shoulder issue or a knee issue, the chapter would say shoulder and knee. But no one is going to read a whole chapter on shoulder to figure out what's going on with their shoulder or see anything online. So the table of contents is going to be pictures of somebody pointing to the place that hurts. And that's going to be, if somebody has a biceps issue, it'll be pointing here. If somebody has a rotator cuff issue, it'll be over on the side. And then you click on that, and that'll bring you to the sites that talk about biceps or talk about shoulders. It's going to have patient testimonials for people to describe what they were going through, if your symptoms align with them. And then say you had surgery, there are post-surgery testimonials too, to see like what it was like to go through surgery.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
What do you tell someone if they're like, hey, it hurts everywhere I touch?
You have a broken finger. Was that your joke?
That was it.
It hurts. It hurts.
That's a good one. We'll have Hurley add in some afterwards on that. And then I think important too is, not everyone that is a fitness instructor or a fitness enthusiast is listening to it. Some people want to, start to regain control of their life, really, when it's what it sounds like from like a CrossFit Launchpad. How would someone get a hold of your wife or the gym or the affiliate to come visit your home?
She is, her email, really, it's rocketronda@comcast.net.
You got to spell that one
2
out
T's.
because
Rockett Ronda is ROCKETTRONDA@comcast.net.
And I might have to send that one. I might have to send an email over there just so I can go hang out and go work out.
Oh my God, she'd love to have you. Come drop in.
Yeah.
Yes. Show these people what OG is all about.
What overtraining is.
Look at this scar. I got this scar. I got this scar.
So, unique after I had the last surgery on my elbow, just kind of clearing everything out. I didn't have it when I was getting out of the Navy. I was mad at the world. I was like, I don't need to clear it out. I'll be fine. I'm fit. I'm good. I started to come back. And what's funny is that while I was doing CrossFit, it was pretty good. It was always while I was playing. The first time it really flared up, I was playing kickball, throwing the ball from third base to first, just winging it on the side. And then, of course, I get back into the the Southie Rec League, and I'm just bombing balls in from center field because I'm an athlete.
Because you're fast.
Yep, and I would be like, all right, I'd show up to the game late. I'm like, all right, I'm just not throwing anyone out. There'd be like a pop fly, someone on third base, and I'm like, I'm going all the way on that. No accuracy at that point in time. I don't know how to throw a softball. I'd be over the backstop and I would just be dragging my arm back in. But
oh boy.
So Orthopedics New England, Dr. Jay Salent did the operation here, worked with Rockett on that, and pushed the recovery to happen quick. Was working in the rehab with the TB12 guys, and happy to report that I no longer hurts when I swing a golf club.
Okay.
And I just have to take care of it more. Yeah. I don't have the amount of loose bodies that were in there, which was.
I saw pictures of that. If you have those pictures, it's impressive. It looks like a dirt road, a gravel road.
If you're gonna do something, if you're gonna be a bear, be a grizzly, right? But so appreciate everything that you've done for me and coming on this podcast. And I figure, it's probably time for a beer. I don't know.
Sure, let's go.
But anyways, you guys know where to find us at Big Night Fitness on Instagram, on any social media site, and then www.bignightfitness.com for everything we have going on. We have the podcast, we have the retreat, we have actually an upcoming panel where Dylan Francis and Mike Finn, you know Mike, right? He's you used to train up at CrossFit New England. He was a tour manager and worked for like all these different artists.
Yes.
Awesome guy. But we're actually going to do a panel on health and lifestyle while touring.
Oh, cool.
And so that'll be February 1st. Tickets and all that stuff will be there. If anyone is still listening at this point in time, I'm pretty sure once I start doing my pitch, they're just going to click on it.
Click.
We'll see you guys in here next week. And again, Doc, thank you so much for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
This is great.